Tell me, when was the last time you saw a truly good person in power? Let that question hang in the darkness. Not someone who pretends to be good for the cameras, not someone who speaks in carefully crafted sound bites about morality and justice. I'm talking about someone genuinely good, someone who would rather lose everything than compromise their principles, someone who believes that honor matters more than victory. Can't think of one, can you? Welcome to the most uncomfortable truth in human history. A truth so dark, so absolute, that it has shaped empires, toppled kingdoms, and decided the fate of billions. A truth that Niccolò Machiavelli discovered 5 centuries ago in the blood-soaked corridors of Renaissance Italy. The ruthless always win, the good always lose, and there's a terrifying reason why. The Prince of Darkness, Florence, 1513. The city burns with political chaos. Niccolò Machiavelli sits in exile, his political career destroyed, his body broken by torture. But his mind is razor sharp, cutting through 500 years of lies about power, and what he sees changes everything. Machiavelli watches as the Medici family claws their way back to power, not through kindness, not through justice, through calculated brutality. They understand something that the good, the noble, the righteous never will. Power is not given, it is taken. In his cramped study by candlelight, Machiavelli begins writing The Prince, not a fairy tale about noble rulers. A surgical manual for political domination. Every page dripping with a truth so raw it would be banned by the Vatican. Everyone sees what you appear to be, he writes. Few experience what you really are. The mask, the eternal mask. The good wear their hearts on their sleeves. They announce their intentions. They play by rules that their enemies invented. They believe that righteousness will somehow magically triumph over cunning. They are lambs walking into a den of wolves. Machiavelli studies Cesare Borgia, the Duke of Valentinois, a man so ruthless that his own name becomes synonymous with evil. But here's what history books won't tell you about Borgia. He was brilliant. When Borgia conquered the Romagna, he didn't just take territory, he took minds. He would execute his own lieutenants publicly to show he was just. Then privately, he would promote their sons to show he was merciful. Fear and gratitude dancing together in perfect, terrifying harmony. The good would have simply been just or simply merciful, never both, never strategic. But here's where it gets truly dark. The architecture of domination. Why do the ruthless always win? Because they understand the game, while the good are still reading the rulebook. Picture power as a chessboard. The good see chess pieces, kings, queens, knights, each with their designated moves, their proper place, their noble purpose. They believe the game is about following rules. The ruthless see something else entirely. They see the board itself. They see that the real game isn't about moving pieces correctly. It's about rewriting the rules while everyone else is playing. It's about flipping the board when you're losing and convincing everyone that this was always how the game was played. Lorenzo de' Medici didn't become the most powerful man in Florence by being the most virtuous. He became powerful by understanding that virtue is a luxury only the powerful can afford. And here's the psychological trap that destroys good people. They believe that playing fair will somehow be rewarded, that the universe has some cosmic justice system. That being right matters more than being victorious. The ruthless know better. They know that history is written by winners, not by saints. They know that moral purity is worthless if you're dead or powerless. They know that the only way to protect your values is to first seize the power to enforce them. Think about it. Every dictator in history started as a reformer. Every tyrant began by promising to fix the system. They understood what the good never will. You cannot change the game unless you first win it. Stalin didn't seize control of the Soviet Union by being more communist than his rivals. He seized control by being more ruthless, by understanding that ideological purity means nothing if you're not alive to practice it. The good exhaust themselves debating principles while the ruthless are busy acquiring power. And by the time the good realize what's happening, it's already too late. But there's something even more sinister at work here. The empathy trap. Here's the cruelest irony of human nature. The very qualities that make someone good are the same qualities that make them weak. Empathy, conscience, the ability to imagine how your actions affect others. These aren't just moral virtues, they're cognitive burdens. Every decision becomes a maze of ethical considerations. Every choice carries the weight of consequences for others. The ruthless don't carry this weight. When Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved," he wasn't just talking about political strategy. He was revealing a fundamental asymmetry in human psychology. Love requires reciprocation. Love demands vulnerability. Love creates dependencies and obligations. Fear creates obedience. Watch any boardroom, any political campaign, any social media platform. The nice guys don't finish last by accident. They finish last because being nice requires time, energy, and attention that could be spent on winning. Jeff Bezos didn't become the richest man on earth by worrying about his competitors' feelings. Steve Jobs didn't revolutionize technology by being considerate of his employees' comfort. Mark Zuckerberg didn't connect the world by respecting privacy boundaries. They won because they were willing to do what the good would never do. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. The good enable the ruthless. Every time you choose to turn the other cheek, you're not being noble, you're giving permission. Every time you decide to take the high road, you're leaving the low road empty for someone else to travel. The ruthless count on your goodness. They budget for your mercy. They weaponize your conscience against you. Think about every time you've been in an argument with someone who fights dirty. They lie, they manipulate, they attack your character. And what do? You try to stay factual. You try to be fair. You try to maintain your dignity, and you lose. Not because you were wrong, not because your arguments were weaker. You lose because you were playing by rules that your opponent had already discarded. This is happening right now in your life, and you don't even see it. The modern Medici, fast forward 5 centuries, same game, new players. Silicon Valley isn't Renaissance Florence, but the principles remain identical. The Medicis have been replaced by tech titans, but the playbook hasn't changed. Look at how Facebook conquered social media, not by building the best product, by being willing to copy, steal, and crush competitors that played fair. When Instagram threatened Facebook's dominance, what did Zuckerberg do? He didn't compete, he bought them. When Snapchat refused to sell, he copied their features and buried them with infinite resources. The good would have tried to innovate. The ruthless simply eliminated the competition. Amazon didn't become the everything store by treating competitors kindly. Bezos systematically undercut prices, operated at losses for years, and drove small businesses into bankruptcy. When critics called this predatory pricing, he called it customer obsession. Same ruthlessness, better marketing. But the most chilling example isn't in business, it's in politics. Watch any election campaign. The candidates who lose are usually the ones who refuse to attack their opponents' families, who won't spread rumors, who fact-check their own advertisements for accuracy. The candidates who win understand that elections aren't won by policy papers. They're won by controlling narratives, by making voters feel something stronger than logical agreement, by being willing to destroy reputations, distort records, and weaponize fears that their opponents won't even acknowledge exist. Trump didn't win in 2016 because he had better policies than Hillary Clinton. He won because he was willing to play a game she thought was beneath her. While she prepared policy positions, he crafted emotional narratives. While she fact-checked her statements, he created alternative realities. The good bring facts to a feeling fight. And in our social media age, this asymmetry has become even more extreme. The ruthless don't need to be right. They just need to be viral. They don't need truth. They need engagement. They don't need consistency. They need attention. But here's the question that will keep you awake tonight. The price of goodness. What does it actually cost to be good in a world designed for the ruthless? Everything. Your time, because you waste it considering other people's feelings. Your energy, because you exhaust yourself trying to do the right thing instead of the effective thing. Your opportunities, because you say no to offers that compromise your values. Your power, because you refuse to use the only tools that actually work. Machiavelli witnessed this firsthand. Girolamo Savonarola, the Dominican friar who briefly ruled Florence, was by all accounts a genuinely good man. He fought corruption. He promoted moral reform. He believed that righteousness would triumph over political calculation. They burned him alive in the town square. The Florentines didn't reject Savonarola because his ideas were wrong. They rejected him because his goodness made them uncomfortable. It reminded them of their own compromises. It highlighted their own moral failures. The ruthless eliminate good people, not because they're threats to power, but because they're threats to the stories we tell ourselves about power. This is why whistleblowers get destroyed while the systems they expose continue unchanged. This is why principled politicians get labeled as naive while corrupt ones get called pragmatic. This is why honest business leaders get outcompeted while fraudulent ones get celebrated until they're finally caught. The good threaten the comfortable lies that allow the ruthless to sleep at night. But here's the most devastating part. The good internalize their defeats. When good people lose, they don't blame the game, they blame themselves. They think they weren't good enough, smart enough, pure enough. They retreat further into moral isolation, convinced that the problem is their execution, not their strategy. The ruthless know that the problem isn't goodness itself, it's bringing goodness to a ruthless game. You want to help people? First, get power. You want to create positive change? First, win. You want to make the world more just? First, control the systems that define justice. But nobody tells you this because admitting it destroys the myth that goodness is enough. So the good keep losing, and the ruthless keep winning, and the cycle perpetuates itself across generations, across cultures, across every human system ever created. Unless the terrible truth. Here's what Machiavelli really discovered, what no one wants to admit. The ruthless don't win because they're evil. They win because they're realistic about human nature, while the good are romantic about it. Humans aren't naturally good or evil. We're naturally tribal. We care more about our in-group than universal principles. We respond more strongly to fear than to hope. We remember threats longer than promises. The ruthless design their strategies around who we actually are. The good design theirs around who we wish we were. This isn't a bug in human nature, it's a feature. For most of human history, the ability to be ruthless when necessary was survival. The tribe that was more willing to fight dirty was the tribe that survived to pass on their genes. We are the descendants of the ruthless, not the good. But evolution didn't stop at individual survival. It continued into social structures. The political systems that lasted weren't the most just, they were the most stable. The economic systems that spread weren't the most fair, they were the most efficient at concentrating power. The game itself was designed by winners for winners. Democracy. It only works when ruthless people agree to temporarily follow rules. Capitalism, it only functions when ruthless competition is carefully regulated. Justice systems, they only serve justice when ruthless enforcement prevents chaos. Even our systems of goodness require ruthless protection. Every humanitarian organization needs security. Every charity needs lawyers. Every church needs politics. Every moral principle needs power to enforce it. The good can only exist under the protection of the ruthless. This is the paradox Machiavelli discovered. To preserve goodness, you must sometimes be willing to abandon it. To protect the innocent, you must sometimes harm the guilty. To serve justice, you must sometimes act unjustly. The truly moral person isn't the one who never compromises their principles. It's the one who compromises them only when necessary to protect something more important. But here's the question that changes everything. How do you know when compromise becomes corruption? How do you use ruthless methods without becoming ruthless yourself? How do you stare into the abyss of power without letting it stare back into you? Image suggestions for Block 6. Ancient tribal warriors in battle stance morphing into modern business suits and political figures. Classical scales of justice with one side holding a sword, the other holding olive branches, balanced precariously. The choice. So what now? Now that you know the game is rigged, now that you understand why the ruthless always win, now that you see how your goodness is being used against you, what are you going to do about it? You have 3 choices, and none of them are comfortable. Choice 1. Stay good and accept losing. Continue playing by your moral rules while others play by power rules. Keep your principles intact while watching the ruthless shape the world around you. Maintain your integrity while having zero influence over the systems that affect millions of lives. This isn't noble. It's selfish. It's choosing personal moral purity over collective impact. It's deciding that feeling good about yourself matters more than actually doing good for others. Choice 2. Become ruthless and accept the cost. Learn the real rules. Use the tools that actually work. Compromise your principles for the greater good. Lie when truth would cause more harm. Manipulate when direct communication would fail. But understand the price. Every compromise makes the next one easier. Every ruthless act rewrites your neural pathways. Every time you choose effectiveness over ethics, you move closer to becoming the very thing you originally wanted to defeat. Choice 3. Master the game without losing your soul. This is Machiavelli's true lesson, the one hidden beneath the surface of The Prince. The most dangerous person isn't the one who's purely good or purely ruthless. It's the one who can be either, depending on what the situation requires. Someone who understands power but isn't corrupted by it. Someone who can play dirty when necessary but returns to clean tactics when possible. Someone who uses ruthless methods in service of good goals, not ruthless goals. This is the path of the strategic saint, the Machiavellian humanitarian, the person who is good enough to deserve power and ruthless enough to obtain it. But this path requires something most people don't have, the psychological sophistication to hold contradictory truths simultaneously. The moral flexibility to adapt methods without abandoning principles. The emotional intelligence to know when compromise serves justice and when it betrays it. It requires becoming comfortable with being misunderstood by both the purely good and the purely ruthless. The question isn't whether you'll choose power or morality. The question is whether you're sophisticated enough to choose both. 500 years ago, Machiavelli wrote The Prince for a world where power was concentrated in the hands of a few. Today, in our connected, democratic, social media age, his lessons aren't just relevant, they're essential, because now everyone has the potential for power. Your voice can reach millions, your choices can influence systems, your strategies can change outcomes. The question isn't whether you'll encounter ruthless people, you already have. The question is whether you'll be ready for them, whether you'll recognize the game when you see it, whether you'll have the tools to play it when necessary, whether you'll be sophisticated enough to win without losing yourself in the process. This is your invitation to join the ranks of the strategically enlightened. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to learn the real rules of power, influence, and human nature. Comment below with your answer to this question. What's one situation in your life where being too good has cost you something important? And if you think someone you know needs to understand these truths, someone who keeps losing because they're playing by the wrong rules, share this video with them, because in a world where the ruthless always win, The good need to get smarter, or they'll keep losing. Not just elections, not just business deals, not just arguments. They'll lose the future itself. The game is already being played. The only question is whether you'll learn the rules before it's too late. Welcome to the real world. Machiavelli has been waiting for you.